Welcome to Batchademia,
a podcast so educational it could be a university class.
With your hosts,
Danielle Dick McHugh,
Kim Hannah,
and Bill Hennibaugh. Welcome, everybody, to Batchademia. Danielle just made an amazing face. The enthusiasm for my countdown I love it. How are you doing, Danielle?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm happy.
You just got back from Adventureland.
I did, which is our family's happy place. We like to stay in the hotel that's connected to it as well, and it, has lots of stains on the carpet and smells like a gas leak, but we're very happy there.
I love it. For those of you not in Iowa, Adventureland is like our Disney World. It's Iowa's version of Disney World.
It makes my family so happy.
Yeah, and it's about exactly like if you scaled down Disney World to an Iowa standard, it's just about what you'd expect. Like you're envisioning it, and you're like, yeah.
Yeah, I was in Disney just like 2 weeks ago, and I will tell you there is definitely a qualitative difference between Disney World and Adventureland. But
one's a world and one's a land. So.
Yes. They both make me happy, though. How have you been, Bill?
It's the difference between Cleveland and Cleve World. I don't know the place. I'm good. We were just talking about how there's this thing when you're academics, there's this like existential crisis when the clock rolls over to August 1st. And so I think Danielle and I are both in that point where we're kind of like, oh man, we gotta go back to doing stuff. Although we both done stuff all summer, but like it's a different type of stuff.
Yeah, I think that my motto is it may be August, but I'm living like it's June.
I like it.
So yeah.
Mine is try not to go on a rage walk before like 10. I made it to 9:55 today, and then I was like, I'm getting fucking caught. Somebody saw me, it's like, you were walking across campus, like, yep, it's my morning rage walk.
I like that you rage walk and I have clarity walks. I also like that I had like rage scooting earlier this summer. I had like a meltdown at work, and so I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna ride a scooter on campus. And we have a lot of brick on our campus, so like the ground is brick, and I gotta say, on a scooter you're like yes, and so it's quite amazing.
Yeah, and they wait till like the end of summer to fix the bricks, because we have rough winters here, so the little paver stones get chunked up, so there'll be a pretty good divot. I tried to ride a skateboard when I first worked here. One of my students had it, and I was like, let me give that a shot, and I just ate it. So
oh man,
come to you and I. Your professors will scoot, skateboard. Hell, I'll slackline with you if I see it. I just won't read poetry.
I like that you have your limits and that you can name them, Bill. That's important.
Much like Meatloaf, I do anything for my students except read poetry.
Read poetry.
Question of the day. We had hometowns. Who in your family would be the best television if you did hometowns?
So I thought this was a great question. I think that my sister Nicole would really ham it up. Like if she needed to be the one that's like, I need to know if your intentions are pure. Like I think that she would bring some of that energy, and I think she'd probably ham it up. But I'll tell you, my kids are kind of a riot. So if my kids were put in front of a camera, I think that they would probably bring it.
Yeah. Nicole was on the show, right? Like way back in season 2.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to,
she was kind of serious, but she would ham it up. I think that she would just really, she would question them, and
that makes for good.
I think that my dad would probably try to tell jokes, and he would try to make people laugh. My mom would probably be very shy and uncomfortable with the entire thing and probably look like she was going to puke the entire time. What about you, Bill?
So my dad probably is the runaway favorite. He is gregarious. He kind of a big personality. Everybody, likes him, but he's also got a lot of like idiosyncrasies. He's kind of that dad that like speaks his mind, and every once in a while everyone just stops and like, what are you talking about? So I think he'd make for great TV. He would definitely do the sit down, like like, what are your intentions with my, son or my daughter if it was one of my sisters? And then he would go on some diatribe, and I think people would be like, I think my older sister is pretty intimidating, and she likes to be intimidating. So I think she would really like take on the mantle of the like if you hurt my little brother or my little sister, I'll kill you.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I don't know that I've seen this aspect of your dad, of Big Bill, because he was coming to cycling for a really long time. And of course, like, I love riding next to Danielle, your mom, but like Big Bill, it took me a while to realize that was your dad.
Oh, really? The Big Bill didn't hint it in?
Well, like if he didn't sit next to your mom on a
Yeah.
bike, like he was behind us, I just thought he was like another rider.
A random 60-year-old dude like, with his American flag headband he wears, and yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
My mom would be like the immediate love of the country because she's just so nice and so like everyone would be like, I just want Bill's mom is like, we just need more Bachelor with Bill's mom. Just like everything's awesome. And yeah.
100%. 100%. That is true.
Nice. All right. You ready for the recap?
Bring it on.
All right. So this is going to be a quick recap. We had hometowns. And obviously, Charity's conflicted. She's falling in love with 4 guys. So first she goes with Aaron, who's from Houston. And they needed to get back to where they started, I think is what she said. And it went pretty well. The family seemed to really like her. I felt like Aaron and his dad had a really like good moment where they kind of cried. He said, I'm proud of you. And then she went to his football field where they had Letterman jackets, which I always think is a real red flag when a guy is like, let me show you my high school, any sport. And it's like, it meaned a lot to me. Like, I don't know. I still want one where they like take them to a wrestling room. Like, I want to show you my wrestling room. They're like sweating, and it's like it just means so much to me. It smells like feet and ringworm in here. So then that kind of they get done. She goes and meets Joey, and so they were not in Hawaii where Joey currently resides. They were in Collegeville, Pennsylvania. And Joey takes her obviously to play tennis, and then his uncle Joe, I think that was his name, comes and meets him. And Joe is essentially like, you're not seeing 100% of Joey. Now, an interesting side note on this: Joe is Joey's uncle. He's also Joey's tennis coach, and Joey is a professional tennis player. And so I was wondering while I was watching this, is like Joey's uncle like worried that he's gonna meet this girl and no longer want to continue to play tennis? Like, is he Joey's manager? I've made all this up. I haven't, looked any of this up, so it's all in my brain.
He feels threatened by Charity.
I think so. I think Joey's his meal ticket, and he's like, oh man. And it seemed like Joe and Joey have a very interesting relationship. He said he means like he's his most important person, but I felt like there was some tension. Then he goes and meets Joey's family. They seem really nice. And then she cries saying goodbye. And it was like a weird kind of situation. You could tell it was up in Joey's head. I think everyone was like, oh, he's gone. Then she goes to Xavier in Cleveland. And, she talks about how she's worried that Xavier isn't really serious. He reminds her of an ex. He takes her knitting, which is the foremost aphrodisiac. I can't believe they even made it to the house. Like, they just didn't like rent a hotel by the hour somewhere. It was cute. He's got like all these like middle-aged women, and there was one other African-American guy there. And I was like, I wonder how many African-American men in the US are part of knitting clubs.
That would be a great stat to find.
I have a feeling it's way less than white middle-aged women. I'm just going to put it out there.
All right. I would say that's an educated guess.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So then she goes and meets his family. The family is like, he wants to be a dad. He's going to be amazing. His mom was really cute. They had a great hometown. Then Dotun, she went to Dotun. He's in Fresno. She thought she wasn't gonna see his parents from Nigeria, but they surprised her. They also met Dotun's grandma, who was wonderful. Like every grandma you'd want, like cooking and then saying they're in love. Dotun's mom loved her, promised her this giant like Nigerian wedding, basically started calling her family. And then they went to a drive-in, they looked at baby pictures, then they go to the rose ceremony, and basically they she goes through the thing. I think Dotun got the first rose, Xavier got the second rose, and then you're like, is it going to be Aaron, is it going to be Joey? Joey gets the rose, Aaron gets sent home. Joey's relieved, Aaron is crying. I'm a little bummed because I thought Aaron would lose his shit during the sweets. Like I don't think he would have dealt well with that. So
Yeah.
and
But it does look like it's a dramatic next episode.
Oh yeah. I think somebody is gonna say they're not ready, that she really wants them to be ready.
Yeah. Things are going to come out.
Things are gonna happen. All right. So let's get to the concepts. You ready for this?
Let's do it.
Or do you have your concepts hat on?
I've got my concepts hat on.
If you were Kim, you would actually have a concepts hat that you'd be like, hold on. All right. Hi, Kim. We miss you. All right. Here we go. So Dotun's family loved her. Like,
can I just tell you his name's Dotun?
Dotun, thank you. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I am a horrible mispronouncer of name. Dotun. Got it.
Gotcha.
So his family loved her, which I think is what everyone wants.
Or is it Dotun? It's Dotun. It's Dotun.
Oh my God.
It's like
you corrected me. No one knows. What was I saying?
It's Dotun. I think I got confused. You were calling him Dotun.
And it's Dotun, not
As
Dotun.
someone who called Rachel Nicole or Nicole
God.
Rachel for an entire season.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Dotun. Now I'm gonna get it wrong every time.
Dotun.
Dotun. Oh boy. All right.
It's because you're reading it and it's spelled D-O.
I'm very sorry, folks. I have a real pronunciation problem just in general. So, all right, Dotun. Did I get that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
like dot. All right. So his family absolutely loves her, and so as I was watching it, I was like, that's what everyone wants. But it was almost to where they're like already like bringing her into the family. Like I feel like if she would have said let's do it, they would have just like hired a priest, got it done right there. Thoughts about that?
So I felt that for me, what made me uncomfortable was all of like the gift giving. So I don't know, like I didn't feel like they were. I mean, here's the thing that's tough because they're in a situation where they do know that this person could be part of their family in like 3 weeks. And so how do you sort of create support while at the same time that like, the truth is like if you in real life were like, hey, in 3 weeks, this is going to be my daughter-in-law, it wouldn't be as weird, I think, to do some of these things. But because she's still dating.
Oh no, as a brother, I'd be like, we need to talk, buddy.
I don't know, like I felt like things were a little weird, but for me, I felt like that was probably more like some cultural differences.
Yeah.
Than I thought that it was like necessarily like I didn't read it as they loved her too much.
Really?
I didn't think actually that I thought they put her on the spot some too. I do think that his sister liked her more than he was expecting his sister to like Charity, but I didn't necessarily read it as like, oh, they really like loved her a lot. I just read it as sort of like some Nigerian cultural differences.
Well, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. And I don't know the culture in Nigeria well enough to speak to it, but I do know in a lot of cultures, it's not uncommon to meet somebody and then, say you're going to marry them. Like the US has a much longer courtship than a lot of other countries. And so maybe that's what's normal in that culture is, the son picks a wife and then it's like, this is the person that they will marry. You welcome it into the family. I was thinking of it from Charity's perspective. It's like, you know, they say, we're ready to have a wedding for you. We're giving you gifts. We're going to throw you a big wedding, your family now. And then she may have to break up with him the next week, you know?
I think that what was probably what sort of struck me in that moment is like, on one hand, it would be really nice to know what the family's expectations are.
Mhm.
Hey, if you all get engaged, like this is how we're gonna do marriage, especially because like we are in Nigeria, you know, for at least it sounds like a decent part of the year. And so
Yeah.
we want you to have a Nigerian wedding as well. I think like knowing some of that up front would really be helpful, but I could see that being like really overwhelming
Mhm.
as well. I don't, I also think that some of what made me uncomfortable with the gift giving
Mhm.
is also probably a cultural practice.
Mhm.
And so, yeah. And so I think that, yeah, I didn't necessarily, I could see that being incredibly helpful because I think that sometimes they don't have enough of a conversation about like, hey, if we do get engaged, how will, like, what are the expectations of a family for this thing? On the other hand, I think we're also like, especially in the US, like that's their decision. So
Yeah.
part of it is like, oh, you're making these decisions for them in
Mhm.
ways that maybe feels a little uncomfortable to us.
Yeah, I do have friends that are from India, so obviously that's not Nigeria, it's a different country. But the expectation, you know, is that if you get married in the US for a lot of them, that you have your US wedding and then you go and you're like extended family, and it is a big deal. Like it is, you know, lots of people, it's a multi-day affair, and that's just part of the agreement you have when you know, you get married. And I feel like in those what are the collectivist cultures, it's much more likely. Yeah, I just kept thinking of the idea of you like, you know, the more you get intertwined, there's a lot of research on this with a family, you know, it's harder to break up with them. And so I just, as I was watching it, I was like, oh man, I have empathy for her if she's like, and maybe she's like, he's the guy and I'm just going through the motions. But if he's not, like, and having someone's family be like, your family now, we're going to throw you like, I wonder if in her mind there's just this like, oh shit, like I'm going to have to break this family's heart, not just his heart, but now this family's heart too.
I think that's probably a really good test to figure out where you actually stand,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're hearing that and all of these alarm bells are going off,
Yeah.
that's probably like a really good sign to go, even though that might make it more difficult
Mhm.
because you realize that you are, you know,
Yeah.
maybe letting an entire family down and not just a person. At the same time, to like go like, oh, this has me freaked out. Maybe
Mhm.
that's a sign that, hey, I'm not as ready as I thought that I was for, you know, marriage,
Mhm.
or that this isn't the person.
Right. Well, and it's a good, you know, we talk about this a lot, but that's where The Bachelor is not like real life, right? Because in real life, if this played out, you would probably be driving home with your significant other and be like, we need to pump the brakes here. Like, you know, I am not getting married anytime soon. I'm not ready for it. Where there's this whole expectation that it's going to happen and there's
Yeah.
an engagement. So going on to Joey, speaking of people who are like really in, he is very smitten, obviously. He is like said he's falling in love with her. He's basically committed. He even kind of had some arguments with his family. His was it his mom who was kind of like, I'm not sure you're showing her 100% who you are. So what do you think the parts are uh, I wrote what parents of Joey are not showing. That makes no sense. What parts of Joey are not showing? They kept saying he's not 100. She's not 100% seeing who he is, and I gotta assume that's like a bad part because the way they're saying it, they're like you don't 100%. They're not like you don't even know the good parts. You're only getting 70%. He's got this other great 20-30%.
I was really curious about that too, because on one hand, I think that the show might make it a lot more possible for you to just turn it on when you
Mm-hmm.
need to,
Mm-hmm.
and then not, you know, like Yeah, that you could just turn it on and you could like project an image of yourself because you're only on the screen for so many times. You're only with Charity for so many hours of all of this experience. But I will say that usually this still is like a 5-week process or something like that. It would be really hard for 5 weeks to not let someone see the other parts of you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, so they're only with the principal is only with the people they're dating for short amounts, but you would think the guys would have picked up on because they're together a lot, and I'm sure they're sleep deprived at points. They're hungry. They travel. You know, you've seen some clips where it's like they travel commercial and they have to be in an airport for 6 hours, and it's like those are all the points where people are at their lowest, right? Like, if you really want to know if you can live with someone, you should get stuck in an airport with them for like 4 hours and just after like 6 hours of traveling and see if they're like a decent human, you know.
Well, that's why, I mean, I do think that a lot of times the guys end up being a check on each other and
Mhm.
they do see aspects of each other that the principal doesn't see. And that's why we have this like, oh, are they going to tell Charity like
Mhm.
what they witnessed and kind of, tattle on the guy or not? And so it's just kind of hard for me to believe that in this high stress situation where you're, like you said, you're uncomfortable a lot of the times. You're not in your own bed, you're not on your own schedule, you don't get to decide the schedule. Like, it's just hard for me to believe that some of that wouldn't leak out.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Do you even have like do you have like deep dark thoughts about what it is? Are you like, here's what I think? No evidence needed.
The only thing that I can sort of think of is that I don't know, like maybe normally he's like a real playboy.
Mm.
And I
That's
don't
Kim's
know.
that's Kim's theory. She has this theory that all tennis coaches are just like they just sleep with everybody that they give lessons to. I don't know if that's a stereotype of tennis coaches, but
I have no idea. I've never really played tennis, but we are
is that a
super into
euphemism or like
pickleball. What?
is that a euphemism or is that like you've just never played tennis? Like,
I've just never played tennis. No
okay,
euphemism.
okay. Pickleball's like old person tennis, right?
Oh my gosh, Ryan is so into pickleball right now, and then Harper's into it because Ryan's into it.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, our department has created a little pickleball league and they play every Tuesday night, but now they're super into it. Like, there's like 3 or 4 of them that are going to take pickleball lessons together this fall. And
I
like
s-
Ryan was trying to work around his pickleball lessons with like my need to watch The Bachelor. Like, I'm not even like making this up.
I saw a great Instagram video of this guy, like, it was like a parody of him being a pickleball coach. And he's like, I don't even know what this, it's not even a real sport. And he's like, first you got to go up, then you're gonna have to go back to the people, and they're like, uh-huh. And then he'd like turn to the camera and he's like, I'm making this shit up as I go along. Seriously, no one knows how to play pickleball. Like,
I I don't know. I mean, I will just say that people flock to the pickleball courts.
it is the fastest growing sport in the US right now.
I know there's thoughts where like maybe we need to get Harper into this early and like he'll be the first
Oh,
Olympic pickleball player.
so this is my last comment on pickleball. I believe it's actually in the Olympics already.
Is it?
And
Well, there goes our dreams.
we had a high school gym coach who was like nationally ranked at it. And she like we had a pickleball unit every year. And one of the best things I loved about her was that she took no prisoners. And so it was like pickleball unit would come on and she would do like the precursory, here's the rules, and then she would just thump everyone who played, just beat the crap out of, like guys on the tennis team, girls on the tennis team, like the best athlete in my class, just, destroy them, no points, strut off with her like $200 pickleball racket. Like, that's what happens. Yeah.
I'll tell you, like we go on Sunday mornings to the park sometimes,
Mhm.
and there are a lot of folks out on the courts then.
Yeah.
They are serious about it.
during the winter at the fit courts in Cedar Falls, they take one of the courts and play. And so when we would play basketball at 5 a.m, there is like at least 8 or 9 people playing pickleball. It's cool.
Yeah, they're already plotting how they're gonna play this winter. So they're
That's-
in deep. They're in deep.
So okay,
Yeah,
this
I
is
don't
really,
know. I don't
this is
know
really
what
my last. Yeah, this is my last pickleball statement. Elaine, so at the University of Northern Iowa, we have a dementia simulation house that also does caregiver groups for people with dementia. And so we have this cohort of older adults, but they also all play in like a pickleball league. And I have heard that these support groups sometimes turn into them like dishing on the pickleball league. Like, well, this person is mad at this person. And it's wonderful. I love it.
I like that there's pickleball drama.
I do. Well, of course there's pickleball drama. I love it. Yeah. We
What
should,
a pickle.
you know what? We should get done with this podcast and just start one about the pickleball drama in the over 60 pickleball scene in Cedar Falls.
Maybe that will be one of the activities in the Golden Bachelor.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. Adult
excited
in a
for
pickle. That would be the name of the
But yeah, I don't know what Joey's dark secret is.
pickled opinions. Sorry, keep
I
going.
find all of it to be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
I
wonder too if they're just like, oh, we don't know that he's ready really for a relationship, and that part of it is that he's kind of projected an image that he's very secure in his ability to get married soon.
I think it's that he has commitment issues. I think he's probably had some type of thing where he's either been engaged before or in long-term relationships, and like it got too serious and he dipped out. And I feel like maybe that's what the family's alluding to, is that he's just not good at, you can kind of see that in his personality, right? Like he like is all for it, and then all of a sudden it's like, this is too real, and then backs out.
I hope that we learn that like he has another part of his personality that like really likes to dress up in weird costumes or something like that, you know?
Yeah, just totally not what we're suspecting. Something
Yeah,
like,
like he's like actually a furry.
yeah,
And
that
that's like the part
that
of
would
him
be
that he hasn't revealed.
and somehow his family knows.
He's an adorable furry. He's
Yeah.
got like a baby face.
Oh, that's good. All right. So my last one thing I want to talk about. Aaron, the consensus at the Hennibaugh house is that Aaron and her were not a great match, but Joey should go home. Aaron seemed really committed, but I felt like everyone I've talked to is like there's something about him that makes people uncomfortable. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting because when I watched their very first date,
Mm-hmm.
I actually really liked him. I thought that he was mature. I thought that they were talking about real things, I felt like.
Yeah.
But there's just something that wasn't clicking. And for me, I felt like their chemistry wasn't quite there or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then as the season continued, I started to not like Aaron as much
Mm-hmm.
because I think he just started to feel kind of threatened
Mm-hmm.
by her relationship with other people, which I get. I mean, it would be really hard to do this show, and even though you know that's what you're signing up for, it's got to be hard. But there is something about his reaction to things and how he would talk about it that didn't sit right with me.
Right.
So what was interesting to me, so I watched the show kind of backwards. So I got home and I turned
Like
it
Memento, like
What?
the movie Memento.
on. Memento moments.
Did you remember that? Where it's
Yes,
like,
where he had like the short-term memory.
yeah, it starts at the end and then you figure, yeah, I
So
like it.
it was kind of like that. I started and I watched the last hour. So I watched her date with Xavier, and then I watched her date with Dotun, and then I went back and I
Mhm.
watched her date with Aaron and Joey. And what was interesting to me is knowing the outcome that she sent Aaron home. Like, one, when I watched it through the first time, I was utterly unsurprised that
Mhm.
she was sending Aaron home. I felt like out of the three of them, that made the most sense to me. But then going back and watching his date with the parents, on one hand, I saw the foreshadowing. I saw her sort of going like, oh, we haven't really gotten to connect. Our relationship's a little bit behind. And I was like, ooh, there's some signs right there where she's sort of saying, hey, he's behind other people. And she was sort of saying, I don't know if I can get there in the 3 weeks. But then the way that she gelled with his family was really actually, I thought, phenomenal. And I thought she just got along with his family well. She felt very relaxed. But I didn't know what to make of her response to their question. If he would propose right now, would you say yes? And I thought it was really honest of her to say, I don't know that I would say yes. But then she sort of couched it in, I would want to make sure that I would, I only want to do this once. So I want to be really, really sure. And like at that moment, I was like, ooh, I feel like if the same question was posed with some of the other guys, she might be able to answer it differently.
Yeah.
And so I actually felt like it was both foreshadowed in the way, like that there were some signs that he was going to be the one to go home. But then there were other ways that I felt like she did just gel with his family way better than she did Joey's family. I actually felt like she gelled with Aaron's family better than she did Dotton's family.
Oh, that's a bold statement.
Well, I mean, I think that Dotton's family, they, like you said, they really loved her, but I didn't necessarily feel like she seemed 100% comfortable there. She didn't seem uncomfortable, but it just felt more, I don't know, easy with Aaron's family.
I felt like Dotton's family was much more like forward. Like I get that, I don't like being thrown into something that's loud and like kind of in my face. Not that they were loud in my face, but you could tell they had big personalities. It's like you walk into that, you have to really kind of gauge what all is going on. Where I felt like Aaron's family was like the exact like vibe she had. Yeah. I don't know. I got the sense that he was, my mom said this when we were watching it, that she got the sense that he was somebody who would have a lot of like, this is what I expect from a marriage. And so there might be issues fitting into that. Like he might be pretty rigid on, here is what I want from a wife. Here's what a wife does. And you saw that some of the things he was saying about like, I think earlier in the season about how he would envision their relationship. And it's like, I sometimes wondered if maybe that's why she seemed uncomfortable sometimes with it, was that she didn't see herself in the box that he had kind of thought up for this. So
no, I could totally see that. Yeah, that he has like some expectations, and if those expectations aren't met, that maybe that's perceived as her shortcoming rather than a different set of expectations.
Yeah, or he's not malleable to those expectations, right? Which I think everyone goes in with expectations in a marriage, but the ones that are pretty successful are the people who try to honor what their partner has for expectations, but also that partner is willing to be flexible and, what they think, and then coming out with something that both parties are really happy about, and it makes for a happy life. I would imagine a lot of marriages that don't work out probably around the expectations and the lack of communication around them is one of the big downfalls. So
I'm wondering, last week when Kim and I were talking about Aaron, I had sort of mentioned that I felt like he felt entitled to certain things with Charity. And I kind of struggle with that because I'm like, I get it. Like if you're on the show and you think you might marry a person, wanting to have time with them and feeling like, hey, I should get to have time with this person that I might be like, that like they expect me to get down on a knee. Then like I should get time with them, like isn't unreasonable. And so I was like trying to sort of negotiate that. I felt like he had like this sense of entitlement is how I was trying to articulate it at the time. And I think that this sort of reworking of that is not necessarily entitlement, but that he is someone that has like clear expectations for how something should work. And if you aren't meeting those expectations, it's sort of seen as like a violation of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, I think it's along the same lines, but it's a better way, I think, of envisioning or like making sense of it than maybe entitlement.
It's a pretty common conversation to have early in a relationship too, around expectations with time with your person you're dating, right? I mean, that's one of the more common ones, is like you go play poker with your friends every Tuesday night, and then you're in a beer league, softball league with them. And you also watch the college football game on Saturday, and you watch Sunday football with them. And then Monday nights you play pool, right? And now you put this person into your life, and it's like you have to decide, where do I take away from this time with my friends that I've had? Where do I give them time, and where do they give me time? And I feel like that argument happens, probably not argument, but conversation happens in just about every relationship, right? And then you have kids, and then there's this whole nother reckoning with your time. So
it's so funny. It reminded me when I was in high school, I dated this guy for almost 2 years. And we were kind of this on and off again, like very dramatic
very
relationship.
Ross and Rachel. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, well, very different, but yes.
Yeah.
So I remember we were having this conversation where he's like, oh, I can just see our future together. Like, we'll wake up really early and you'll go collect all of the eggs from like all of the chickens that we're gonna own, and like then we're gonna take care of the animals, and then you go off to work. And I like had this moment where I was like, no, this is like not at all how I envisioned my life. I was like, I just didn't see myself like taking care of the cattle before I went to work in the morning. And that's when, I think I broke up with him really shortly after that. And I think some of it was he would describe our lives together, and I'm like, I don't know that is how I envisioned myself 5 years from now. And it freaked me out. And I don't think I could articulate it as like an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
But like now looking back on it, I was like, oh yeah, I think that's what maybe prompted me to break up with him.
It's probably
like,
good
to feel that time.
Right. It's good he communicated it though, because then you knew the expectation, and it wasn't like, I'll do whatever. And that's probably when couples really get in trouble, when someone's like, I could do anything, we'll do whatever you want. And then they hit a point and it's like, no, actually, I didn't mean that. We're going to stay here in this town and, live here forever.
Well, and I think I also knew, like, that makes so much sense that was how he is envisioning our life. He actually had never communicated anything to me that would have suggested otherwise, but there was something about him like creating this really vivid picture of what like my morning routine was going to be like, that I was like, oh,
you didn't see yourself putting on like with your apron collecting the eggs.
Just like, nope, that's not me. And that's not what my mornings look like.
I think I had a girlfriend, and I went and did something with my friends, and she's like, you're spending way too much time with them. And it's like, well, we've been dating for a month, and like I spent one night with them, and then it was like, this isn't gonna work. So yeah. All right, Danielle's dish. What do you got?
All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about, to go back to Joey, is this the real Joey? And one of the things that struck me is, I think it was his Uncle Joe that described him, and it might have been his mom too, described him as a people pleaser. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And that they were worried that like he was, because he's a people pleaser, that he was just showing Charity what she wanted to see. And I've been doing a lot of workshops around planning and goal setting. And then I've started doing some one-on-one coaching with people on time management. And kind of two big things come up. One is perfectionism, people that are struggling with perfectionism. And the other thing is actually people pleasing, that people are really like tentative to saying no to things that they know they should say no to because of expectations that they perceive that other people have of them. And I got to like thinking about Joey and the people pleasing, because like I don't think that people pleasing, or perfectionism for that matter, and I wanted to know, because you might have a different perspective with like your counseling background and things like that. I don't see it as necessarily like a good thing or a bad thing. I think both of these things are neutral. I think they can be strengths and they can be weaknesses. I think that people that are people pleasers, which by the way, I think is like a lot of the population, right? So it is natural and healthy to care about other people. And I think that people pleasers oftentimes, and by the way, I'm not a people pleaser for the most part. There's certain people I want to please, but like for the most part, I'm not a people pleaser. I think that people pleasers, though, can be incredibly empathetic people, because in order to please other people, you have to understand what you think other people want and
Yeah.
try to meet their needs. And like, that's kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And so I was like thinking about that as like the way that it's oftentimes portrayed as a negative, and it definitely was in this case. Like, oh, he's a people pleaser, and because he's a people pleaser, he's also not showing you his real self. Like the
Right.
people pleasing aspect is the false you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always had a little bit of an issue. So one of the things that I study, so I don't study people pleasing or perfectionism in a research professor hat kind of way, but I do study identity construction
Mm-hmm.
and the performance of identity. And in my field, this idea that we have either like fake identity or real identity is really challenged.
Mm-hmm.
That you are kind of what you do. So even if you are doing something that reads as like fake to maybe other people in your life, that like that is you creating who you are.
Right.
It's like an iteration, a performance of who you are, that over time, if you did that enough, that is who you are. So like you would never say like, oh, Bill's playing pickleball, that's like he's really faking it. Right? Like you're like, either he's a pickleball player or he's not, right? And the more that you do that, the more that like you might become a pickleball player.
Yeah.
And so I was just sort of thinking about people pleasing and fakeness or authenticity of identity.
I think this is where you get into the whole thing about boundaries, right? And it's like, it's good to be a people pleaser. And I think in any successful relationship, you do things because you know your partner likes it, right? And so it's like, I may not love watching rom-coms, right? But maybe my significant other does. And it's not such a horrible thing for me to watch them. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll watch that with you. Why not? It makes you happy. It's time together, right? That's people pleasing. If you never did anything like that for your partner, that'd be a really horrible relationship, right? But I think it's probably when it becomes problematic is when you don't set up boundaries, right? So they're making you do things that you absolutely don't want to do, or all you do is give and you get nothing that makes you happy in the relationship. And now I didn't even think about this when you're talking about this. It's like, I wonder if Joey's family is concerned that he's been in relationships before where he just does whatever the person wants. He gets absolutely snowballed. He loses his whole sense of identity and self, and he stops stuff that makes him happy, which there are people who would do that.
Absolutely.
And so I wonder if that's the concern that they have, right? Is that maybe he's not into certain things. And
Well, and even the show itself, one of my biggest problems with the show is that because you have like the principal or the lead,
right.
and then all these other people that are fighting for their attention, I think that you do set it up in a power relationship where Joey needs to do a lot more people pleasing for Charity than Charity has to do for him. And so I could see his parents being concerned for the reasons that you just stated, but also being concerned that it feels like it is this unequal relationship right now, because it is.
Yeah.
And the show kind of sets it up that way.
Well, and there's really good research that breeds contempt. And that's one of the big four that ends a relationship, right? Is that if all you do is what your partner wants to do, eventually there's going to be contempt on your part. And you're either going to at some point just explode with it, or it's going to slowly turn into kind of like a poison in the relationship. And you're going to be like, we always do this. Why don't we do something I want to do? And some of that's on the person who is people pleasing, right? Like your partner should look out for your feelings, but also the person who's people pleasing needs to set a boundary and say, yeah, I don't want to do that. It's fine for you to go do it, but I'm not going to.
Well, you don't want to lose yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't want to lose yourself. I find especially actually with people our age, Bill. So, in their early 40s, whether you have kids or
Very
not,
early 40s. Very early 40s, guys.
very,
Very early.
very early 40s.
Basically late 30s. Almost 50.
One of the things that I noticed is that like it's really common, whether it's to work or whether it's to our families or whatever, that around this age that you have just kind of got swept up in life, and even just knowing what it is that you really like anymore is shifted. And I can't believe how many people I talk to, and they'll be like, oh, well, if you would ask me, well, what I enjoy doing in my free time, I tell you something that I enjoy doing in my free time in my 20s. Yep. And they're like, actually, like, I like cooking now. I like pickleball now. Right. And like, they don't realize that their likes have even shifted as they've aged. And so like, I think maybe there is this concern that as a people pleaser, it would be easy to fit like, oh, well, like, yeah, I like doing this thing because my partner likes doing it. At some point, do you just like lose track of what it is that you even like?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to make space. I think it's also important to give your partner permission to do stuff that, and I'm not saying permission like you have permission, but like setting up a situation where it's like, you go do what you like. I don't have to be involved, right?
Yes.
And like, hey, if you love this, you go do it, and I will make dinner, give you that time carved out for it.
I think you and Elaine are fantastic at that.
Yeah, we probably almost veer too far over sometimes, where we have like our very like universal, but we spend time together too, and it's
Well,
but we don't have
you
kids.
also do a lot of things together, like like you're at all of her cycling classes, you watch The Bachelorette together. Like
we do we
lot,
support each other very well. I think part of our thing is we don't have kids, and I feel like kids just throw this whole other like the scheduling, the time, they create such a different aspect of time. Yeah,
they do. It's weird.
Lessons learned.
I'm thinking a lot about expectations. I don't know what exactly my like clear takeaway is right now, but I think our conversation around I think I'm thinking about the relationship between expectations and entitlement, and when is it entitlement and when is it just that your expectations aren't the same?
Yep.
And I think that's interesting.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a good answer, right? Or it would be like there would be a class and it'd be like, here's where that you're past that line.
Yeah, it makes me like want to dig through research on it.
That's why you're an academic, right? Like, I should research that. Instead of this research project I have going on right now, I'm going to go do this other one that sounds way more interesting. So
absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know what my lesson learned is. I think I liked what you said about like people pleasing and perfectionism and all of that around there. So you got to look out for those things, and you got to know that sometimes people pleasing is the way to go, and sometimes it's not, and you got to figure out where your line is.
Yeah, I really like to, rather than think of it as like, oh, this is a weakness of mine, to go like, no, it's both a strength and it's a weakness. You just have to decide when you can utilize it as a strength and when it's not serving you.
Nice.
Discernment, Bill. Discernment.
Discernment. I love that word. All right, you ready for the city shout out?
Let's do it.
Fort Collins, Colorado. It is in obviously Colorado. 169,000 people, fourth largest city in Colorado. It's got a population density of 2,968 square miles. Right now in August, the average high is 85 degrees. What else can I tell you? The largest employer is Colorado State University. Go Rams. I think that's a Ram sign. They have brewing there, Odell Brewing Company. They make a delightful beer. People like to cycle. They have a police department. And my favorite thing, famous people. You got anyone famous you can think of from there before I start?
No, but I have to say, I expected Fort Collins to be a bigger city than it actually is. It's not like it's small, but it's not like
Yeah.
it's not as huge as maybe in my imagination it was.
I've been up there a couple times, and that sounds about right. When I lived in Denver and worked for University of Colorado, I went up there for meetings, and that seems about right. You know, I'm not seeing a lot of really Ben Wolf, who's an actor, never seen anything with him. Derek Thieler, who was in Baby Daddy. There is a disturbing lack of important, like famous people from. You're all important to us, Fort Collins, but I'm not seeing anybody that I'm just like, oh, I got it. Temple Grandin's from Fort Collins. If you don't know who Temple Grandin is, she is the foremost expert in animal husbandry, which is getting animals to get it on. But she also has Asperger's, and she is a world-renowned speaker about it. And if you ever have a chance to listen to Temple Grandin speak, she is phenomenal. And there's an HBO special about her life where Claire Danes plays her.
You just made me interested in something I never thought I'd be interested in, Bill. So
Animal husbandry or Asperger's?
Animal husbandry.
Nice. All right. That's all I got.
That's all we got. See y'all next
Parting
week.
words.
I see y'all later.
Bye, everybody. Have a good week.
You have been listening to Batchademia
with your hosts, Danielle Dick McGee,
Kim Hanna,
and Bill Hennibaugh.
All thoughts and opinions expressed on the show are solely those of the person who spoke them.
If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to the show, leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Also, please share with your family, friends, colleagues, and other ardent Bachelor fans.
If you have comments or questions you would like us to address on the show, you can email us at batchademia@gmail.com.
Or on the Twitter with the handle @Batchademia.
Thanks for listening.